Hello, class. This is Dr. Neil Soggie, and I'd like to just share with you a little bit about what we've done this semester and just look back a little bit and give you some of my own personal experiences of how I have applied many of the concepts that you've learned during the semester. Now, during the semester, you have learned about learning, about memory, about language, about intelligence and motivation, about stress and emotions, about social psychology, as well as learning about personality and psychological disorders, as well as treatment. And I want to talk with you today about what I've been doing over the course of this summer outside of the virtual classroom. And I'm sharing this as an example to demonstrate that psychology is a wonderful discipline that is useful in virtually any situation. First, it is useful to understand how other people work and think and function, but it is also important to help you understand yourself better, how you think and feel and function. And the great thing about psychology is it doesn't just work on people, but on other sentient creatures as well. Now, in this time of COVID-19, because I am in a category that is very vulnerable to the virus, I have been very, very careful to keep my social distance. While I usually am working with people in the classroom or in the therapy room, this summer I am working with animals instead. And I just want to take some time and walk you through what I've been doing to share with you how it relates to what you've learned in this Introduction to Psychology course. So, I've been working with a herd of buffalo, also known as bison. And a North American bison is North America's largest land animal, weighing just over a ton and with large horns. Well, in this case, this herd of bison have three main problems to deal with. Number one, the land where they are located does not have a steady supply of surface water, nor is there electrical power in the area. So, a pumping system has been put in place so that the bison can drink. However, there is a challenge with this. The bison have to pump the system just like you would have to pump a hand pump on an old-fashioned well. And teaching a bison to do that can be tricky. So how are they going to learn to do that? The second thing, they get stressed due to the lack of water and some other issues, and they decide to roam freely. The problem with that is that they're located in an agricultural area, so farmers are not happy with a herd of giant animals trampling their crops. And the third issue is there's a mix of two groups within the herd that do not get along. And this has caused some divisions in the herd, and they're not living in harmony and are not satisfied with the life they have. And this in turn ties into problems 1 and 2 and just exacerbates everything that's going on. So, what is my role and how does it relate to psychology? Well, in this class, we've learned about basic learning and how it can occur on many different levels. The bison need to learn a new skill, pumping water for themselves. However, that is going to entail me teaching them these new skills. And this will not be easy since bison do not like people at all. They will run from people, and if they feel threatened, they will charge with their massive bulk and their horns. So I need to figure out a way to teach them. And there are a few basic ways that I will do this. First, classical conditioning, where I can pair a conditioned stimulus with an unconditioned stimulus. This will occur on a couple of levels. First, to pair humans to a positive experience so that they are not afraid of me, so that I can work with them. And secondly, to get them to see a metal pump as something positive, not something scary. Next, I need to develop operant conditioning so that they learn not only to drink from a metal pump instead of a stream, but also to operate that pump. So that is the learning side of things. Next, we learned in this course about memory. We learned about immediate, short-term memory, and long-term memory. We also learned about something called procedural memory. Well, we need to use all of these forms of memory to shape the bison's behavior. The immediate memory and short-term working memory is used by getting bison to perform small natural tasks that provide a reward, and then repeating them several times a week so that it transforms to long-term memory. And the procedural memory means that they need to do a physical task repeatedly, week in and week out, so that a pattern is held in their mind. Just like you find studying in college and learning new vocabulary every week stressful, bison find learning stressful as well. So we need to keep that in mind and be able to manage that. Next, we learned in this class about language. There are many forms of language, but obviously the use of language is limited when I'm interacting with bison. However, I can communicate with the bison by giving each of them a name and using either a calm, soothing yes or a harsh no. And over the course of weeks, each individual does begin to recognize and respond to these simple, basic communications. And in addition to tone and cadence of my voice to express my wishes, I can also use body language, standing up or bending over, walking deliberately or walking slowly and methodically. And all of these are a form of language known as kinesthetic expression. And for their side, they can express themselves through this kinesthetic expression as well. Slow exploration movements, expressions of frustration or stress, and they can express that by shaking their head or stomping their hoof, and oftentimes it's both. They oftentimes express their frustration with me in working with this nose pump. And then there's intelligence. And if you remember, there are different forms of intelligence. Each individual has different forms of intelligences that you need to be mindful of. And the same is true for bison. Each individual has its own skills that they acquire faster than others. For example, one bison named Maleficent, I named her for the Mistress of Evil, is highly intelligent in the use of power. In fact, while the male bull is usually the head of the herd, in the case of this herd, Maleficent is the true ruler. Another example is a bison named Margaret Thatcher. She's very good at figuring out mechanical devices and has on more than one occasion slipped the latch to a rancher's fence. in order to access an area where a rancher has stacks of hay to allow the whole herd access to this hay. Sneaky Margaret Thatcher. Then we learned about motivation. And like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, bison have a strong hierarchy as well. The first level is food and water. After that is safety. After that is sex, family, and herd. And after that, well, in people, it would probably be enjoyment, entertainment, that sort of thing. And that's probably true for bison as well. But I'm not sure what's after that because I can't talk to them and I can just only imagine that they have other goals. But I do know that they enjoy playing around once all their other needs are met. So the trick here is that a lack of water, because of that lack of water and that being their basic need, the bison will go through any fence, no matter how strong it is, to get what they want because they weigh over a ton and they have horns and they can do that. And this puts safety, food, and water at odds with their other needs because they see me as a threat while I'm trying to help them get food and water safely. So again, the trick here is getting them to feel safe with me. Then there is another problem, the whole need for sex, family, and herd thing. Well, as I already mentioned, in the original herd, there were just 5 animals. King is the bull, Maleficent, the real ruler and also the dominant female, and then Queen, the second female, and then Margaret Thatcher, the third female, and then Princess, the last female, and the one everyone else picked on. Now, something happened a few months ago. 4 more bison were added to the mix. 2 of the new 4 were males. So, Princess decided that she was tired of being picked on, and she crowned herself as leader of this new family. In her mind, it appears that she could keep these 2 bulls all to herself and have 2 females to boss around. Well, this caused another problem because even when there was food and water available, Princess was constantly leading her new family off in directions that were unsafe onto agricultural land. So, I needed to help them navigate around that problem in their motivation as well. Now, we also learned in this class about stress and emotions as well. So it was important for me to not stress them out too much by forcing quick changes and upsetting them emotionally. However, I also needed to encourage them to feel emotionally connected to each other so that there would be a healthy, cohesive herd in the end. And it was a trick to manage that, to be sure. Now, we also learned about social psychology. And bison are very much social animals. This also means that there needs to be a social order in the herd when it comes to the use of resources. For example, while Maleficent tells the herd where to go, when it comes to drinking one by one, there is a clear order, and it unfailing was always the same. King always drinks first, then Maleficent, then Queen, then Margaret Thatcher, then and only then Princess was allowed to drink. And then when the new group came in after Princess, then the 2 younger bulls would drink, and then the two youngest females. And it never, ever changes. The trouble is that one of the problems, as I already mentioned, was that Princess was clearly dissatisfied with that arrangement. Hence, she had tried to start a break-off family and cause the problems for the herd. So, on occasion, I would walk into the watering time and gently direct the next bison in line to move away so that Princess could drink earlier in the order. And this seemed to help somewhat with her satisfaction with the status quo. In essence, I was moving her up occasionally in the status of the group. And in her mind, it seemed to give her more acceptance with the group as it was. Now, in social psychology, there is also an area called family dynamics and family systems theory. And within this is something called triangulation. And triangulation is basically where people make themselves feel better by using a social situation between two individuals to pick on a third person. And the same kind of triangulation can cause a lot of problems in families. And the same is true with bison. So, when I would hang out with the herd and saw triangulation going on toward Princess in particular, I would walk into the group and break up the dynamic somewhat. And this too went a long way to help Princess be happier with the group and easing up on her push to start a second family. Now, we also learned about personality, and in there was Adlerian psychology and their role of the inferiority or superiority complex. Basically, how social forces around a person can form their personality. And this is something that was also true for the bison. While there were lots of different dynamics going on, the example I used of Princess is a perfect example of the inferiority complex, and then gaining a sense of superiority and having a superiority complex when the younger herd arrived. Then we have psychological disorders and treatment. And this ties in greatly to my own sense of safety in working with these animals. Now remember, these are animals that weigh as much or more than an SUV, have pointy horns, and can run at 40 kilometers an hour. And most importantly, they typically do not like people. So I want to be safe while also helping them. Now, this is where my training in effective neuroscience comes in handy. You can basically think of a bison as a giant 2,200-pound Viking with an anxiety disorder. Now, what that means is, first off, they have the potential to hurt you. But they have a mechanism within them that is more inclined to run away than to attack. You see, at the heart of an anxiety disorder are two self-preservation systems that automatically assess the environment and use the amygdala as a key mechanism for moving the body. The first system is what is called the threat intensity system. You can think of that system this way. If you see a grizzly bear, your body knows that it is more of an intense threat to you than a bird flying by. It measures the environment and evaluates the potential of threats and activates the body to run away through the emotional system mediated through the amygdala. And the second system is called the danger distance system. This system measures how far an assessed danger is away from you and activates the body accordingly to escape from it. So, for example, if you see a grizzly bear on a distant mountain, your body is not very afraid. But if that grizzly is 10 feet from you and coming towards you, it's a completely different story altogether. Now, in an anxiety disorder, these systems have become too sensitive so that the person always feels on edge and activated and really to the point of exhaustion. And that's basically how bison feel. And that is why they like being alone and why it takes so long to get accepted by them. Now, knowing that bison are wired with these two systems set on high means that I can interact with them safely and confidently, knowing how to manage those systems through my interactions with them. So, in essence, I used conditioning techniques to get into the herd by pairing my presence with food and snacks. Then, pairing the pump to them drinking water. First with me pushing the pump, then with me manipulating the pump while they drank from the pump, and finally to them manipulating the pump and realizing that they can pump the water themselves. Now, while it sounds easy, it was a slow process over a course of 80 days. However, we've gone from a fractured herd that bothered neighboring farmers and a herd that needed daily watering to a herd now that is content with its grazing area. They spend their day as a unified herd, and they can pump their own water, so they don't need to deal with people anymore. So everything that you have learned in this course of Introduction to Psychology works. And not just for people, even for the wildest and largest of animals as well. And I hope you keep that in mind as you select future classes. Psychology is useful anywhere. And I hope you have a wonderful end to the semester. You take care. Bye-bye.